So welcome to the class. Let's get started. Hopefully everybody has had time to connect and get positions comfortably for the next 2 hours. I know I'm thrilled about standing here for 2 hours. Anyway, this was the original card. Let's get that off the screen. This was the original card for number 1, the first card we're going to do. And the first thing we have to do is we have to build this piece right here. So you have your...
Welcome to the class is still on.
What's that?
The welcome to the class is still on the screen.
So what we have to do is we have to stamp on this little deckled edge cut piece that you have in your packet first. And it calls for stamping in black, and that's fine if you want to do it that way. I chose an alternate here, which is embossed in gold. So it's however you want to do that. So I'm going to set that aside, and we'll come back to these, and let's get started. So here are all my parts for this. There's my mats. So we've got this little guy right here. And let me talk about this for a second. So, you know, when you're stamping onto something that you can't cut out afterwards and square up, putting your phrase on square is very important. And so I went through several iterations yesterday of getting this stamp squared onto the block. And I've checked that, and it does work. So I'm going to go ahead and use the black ink that we had said we would do. And I'm going to put that on there simply without overstamping too much. And I set it up so that these two edges of the block are square with this. I want it to come down to the bottom, and so I'm just sighting down to see that the edge of the block is parallel here and parallel there. And I'm going to position it right about like that, check my parallel, and then stamp it. And just stamp even pressure. And it came out within pretty close to being parallel with that bottom edge, and that's all your eye needs to follow. So that's a technique that I've used a lot of times in this career to make sure that when you're stamping on something where you can't adjust it by trimming it out later, you get that. So now we're going to take this card and we're going to fold this. Actually, we're going to fold this. And the fold goes toward or away from the indentation. So you fold away from the indentation. Yeah, you fold away from the indentation. We're going to mount some strip tape on the back of that. It looks very large, but it's not. They pre-cut these for me, and they did a nice job. So this is the dimensional tape. We hope you all have some of this. It does pop this up nicely. And that one's too big. We'll trim that off. And I'm sure that one is too big as well. So I hope everybody can hear me, and you're checking in to let us know that you're receiving us okay and everything's coming through nice. We're going to put this on about 1/4 of an inch from each edge. And so that's the basis for card number 1. Okay, we're going to set that aside for a second, and we're going to work on building our flowers. So we have all of our pieces here. And I'm going to start molding. I'm sorry, I'm not going to start molding because we're not going to do this yet. we're going to go through all 5 of the cards, and we're going to build the bases first. So this is the base for card number 2. That's what it'll look like when it's done. So if you've got the pieces for card number 2, which will eventually look like this, we can take those pieces. We've got our green infill, and it fits like that. So we're going to take our tape runner and run it along like that. Slide this back into there snugly, fold it over, and adhere it. And we'll set that back with our second piece. Card number 3 is this guy. And I don't know if everybody is okay with this, but we had one of our customers that let us know that we missed this extra piece that was supposed to be in the paper pack. So what we normally would do would simply take that piece, put it in here just like we did with the green, fold this over and glue it. But if you don't have that, you have to make an accommodation. So I'm going to cut out this piece using the die, and I'll show you how we do that. No, I need a little bit more camera space, so we'll put that up in just a second. Okay, we use a crossover machine to do this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of paper and I'm going to position it just like that. And I'm going to take this die and I'm going to position it just like that so I can see the two of them together. And then I'm going to take a little piece of painter's tape and I'm going to adhere the die to the pink piece of paper. Remove my white piece of paper. Put my pressure plate on top and pick up my machine again. Pop that away. Put my machine away. Sorry about the vibration on the table. But now this new piece, which we just cut, fits nicely. And that's how you make up it if I've messed up and not gotten that one in your paper pack. So we'll do the same thing with this one. We'll use our tape runner and we'll affix that piece, and that piece will be ready when we come back to it. Now we have, that's card number 3. Card number 4 looks like this. And so what we're going to do on card number 4 is we're going to take the folded piece that's here. We're going to fold that one down. And this piece is going to fit in. But before we do that, we need to emboss this. So we're going to use the Splatter Background. And if you bought the kit, you have it, or you have something like it if you didn't. And so we're going to take a Versamark pad, and we're going to ink this up. And I don't want to stamp it this way because it won't quite cover everything. So we're going to go sideways with it. And we will overlap it a little, but because it's random, if you're a little bit this way or a little bit that way, it really will not show. So I'm not going to make a big deal about trying to overlap it or not overlap it. We'll just put it down. And then we will take a little bit of the white embossing powder. And my white embossing powder has a lot of static electricity in it, and it's dry as can be here in California in the wintertime. So an embossing buddy would have been a good idea. And I have it prepared and it's sitting right in front of me, but like always, I skipped right past that step. But let's heat this up and get this one set. You can see how close to the embossing powder my gun is. When we've missed this step with our vellum, and we're going to have to do this with the vellum as well. And with the vellum, you want to be a good 4 or 5 inches back from that, and it will take a little longer to emboss it because the vellum will actually melt. We'll go over that. We'll be back to that step in just a second, and we'll get that. Okay. Hopefully that didn't wreck anybody's eardrums. Okay, now we'll add a little bit of our tape to the inside of this one. You can choose whether there's more dots or less dots, completely up to you. I'm just going to fold that in just like that. And we did a little bit differently than when Kitty did it. Kitty applied it to the outside of the card, like that, and then cut this piece over the top. We just decided to modify it because we were cutting that for you, and we did it in one. So that's that one. And then finally, we have this one, and we cut this piece. It's the extra frame from the original first piece. And we're going to adhere that as well. So we're going to bend this one. We're going to turn this one over, and we're going to apply our dimensional tape again. I can keep you on screen. One of my biggest flaws on this is that I don't pay attention to what I'm actually doing as far as the camera is concerned. So scream and yell at Rob and tell him to put me back in camera when I get off too badly. And he'll yell at me. I'm assuming there are a lot of questions so far, but they must be handling them okay. because they're not yelling at me to tell you anything about it. Okay, so we have that piece for later. Now we're going to do one more thing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kitty, and we'll watch her teach you how to mold these things. So we're going to go back to the vellum. This is on card number 2, because we have to emboss this as well. And the vellum is very staticky, so I am going to use my embossing buddy this time. And back to our Versamark pad with our splatter background. And we're only going to cut the center of this out. So we can do this twice right down the middle. Okay, so that's going to finish the stamping portion of the class. That's all we're going to do with stamps. We are going to emboss this now, and that will take care of all the embossing. And after that, we'll be molding and building. Okay, now remember I cautioned against putting this too close, so let's turn it on and heat it up, but we're going to keep this a good 4 inches away from this. I tried this earlier today for the first time and got to about there, and the vellum literally explodes in blisters if you're too close to it. My gun takes about 15 seconds to warm up and start to be good enough to heat it up. And old habits die hard. I'm trying to keep it away. I want to get closer to it to speed it up. Too many years of doing this at a show where nobody wants to stand and watch you heat up embossing, so you do it quickly. But not a good idea on vellum. Okay, my die will fit into the middle of that, so I'm going to let that cool for just a second, and then we're going to cut it out. Back to the machine again. And if you have the multi-part die and you've already separated them, you can put them together to do this, or you can do them one at a time. I have our older version of this, and some of you may have this one where they're all connected, which works with the stamp set to make a watercolor flower with poinsettia. But we're just going to put that right in the middle and run it through. And vellum lets you know if you've cut it well enough or not, because you can hear the cracking. So those should all just pop right out. Okay. Get that out of the way. And we'll place those pieces over with our material for card number 2. And now I'm going to turn you over to Kitty. Kitty's recorded a little video to talk about molding. This is where I learned, and she's a master at it. So this will take just a second for me to get going with this, but then Kitty will come on and I'll be back after she's done.
Hi everybody, I'm Kitty Caracciolo, and I am here today to show you some of my tips and tricks for forming my beautiful poinsettia flowers. I'm going to start here with the largest petal, and I'm going to use my large round ball stylus to form the leaves. And I go round in a circle all the way around, and this is going to push all those leaves up. And I wanted to show you just one other little trick. If you don't have one of these, I have a round pointed paper piercer, and I can do the forming with it. I also have just a pen lid that I can do the same thing with. So just in case you haven't been able to get these tools to make your flower, don't give up. You can use all kinds of things. Now I turn it over face up, and I will push down in the center of this large flower with a smaller round stylus. Another trick here is I like for my the leaves of my poinsettias to push way up. So I layer 2 or 3 of these molding pads together so that I can push down and get more depth as I form them. Now here's the thing. I have 3 or 4 of these molding pads, but you can use a couple of mouse pads under your molding pad if you have them around the house, or if they're cheaper to buy at the office store rather than ordering another one of these. So the trick to me in really forming the flower and getting a lot of dimension is with the layered molding pads. Now this little flower, I'm not going to do all the 4 flowers that's in the set, but I am going to show you that I use a smaller round ball to form the smaller petals, or leaves as we really call them for poinsettias. And I'm going to pick up my smallest tipped stylus to push down to get that flower to pop right up. Another trick that I have is I like to use the green layer, a couple of layers that are the same size as the largest red layer of the poinsettia, so that it has a good foliage behind the full flower. But I don't push down as hard on this as I do these, because I want it to stand out from behind the flower layers. And so to make a really full poinsettia, I'll use 2 layers of green of the largest flower that you're making, and 2 red of the largest flower you're making. I offset them when I layer them, and after that, I just use one layer of the other flowers. So there's that little trick. Now, let me show you. These little flower centers that go inside the full flower, the center of the flower, I push down with a small tip stylus to form them. So I put 3 in mine. You can put however many you want. And let me show you here. One of my favorite tricks that helps me not go crazy when I'm working with really small die cuts is I use my molding pad. I put the small die cuts out on the molding pad. I form them with my stylus, and then I use my reverse tweezers. If you don't have those, you can pick up with your regular tweezers, but it's easy to pick them up right off of this because you can get your tweezers right out from under it. When you're out here on your hard surface, it's a little harder to pick them up. So another trick that I would like to share with you is when you're forming your complete full poinsettia and you're trying to layer those borders so that each petal shows well, it's really helpful to do that layering on your molding pad because the molding pad kind of holds them in place a lot better than if you're sliding around here trying to work that, if that makes sense. The next thing I want to show you is how I like to form my holly leaves. If you got the packet with the leaves, you're going to want to put some form in them to make them look more natural, because it's not really very pretty to have that laying there flat under your card. So I use the leaf tool that came with the set that I've had. I've had this set for years, and it's the other end of this rounded small tip stylus. But it's very easy to push down, and you don't have to push hard. Just give it a good score line, and you're going to get some dimension. And if you don't have one of these, then if you have a paper piercer, just need to be a little careful, but you can push down and form those leaves that way. You may want to hold it in place a little better than I just did while I was showing you. And if worse comes to worse and you don't have a paper piercer, you have 2 hands and you can form these petals with your fingers. The important thing is that you don't want your holly leaves to look flat, because it just does not make an interesting card project. The last thing I'm going to show you is these little flat circles that you want to put in on your holly. They are really tough to pick up off of this right here. It's like you have to big with your fingers to hold it in place. So what I would suggest you do is use your tweezers, put your little circles on this molding pad, because it gives you a little push so you can get under it and pick it up really easy. Just glue them right in place with your adhesive. I like to use glossy accents because I live in Florida and we have a lot of humidity here, and glossy accents holds really well. One more thing that I wanted to show you is I've cut a pink poinsettia here, and I wanted to show you how you can add depth of color. And you could do it with your red if you have like a darker red ink, like Fired Brick Distress ink, or use your darker colors of the color fused inks that you have in your kits. You can add texture to these flowers as well, even though they're a darker color. So I actually colored a couple of them here for you, and I'm just going to show you that it's a light touch. Don't push down hard. If you push down hard, you're going to get a big blob all at once. I actually sometimes stamp off a little bit or rub off a little bit before I put it on the petal. And I like to take my applicator here and go around the edges a little bit more just to add color. And let me just tell you, Dave sells these mini applicators on the Rubbernecker store site, and they are a fantastic tool to use when you're wanting to shade or add color. And they were made by the company Soft, S-O-F-F-T, and they are the makers of Pan Pastel chalks. And I first started using these when I played a lot with chalks, and I decided to try them one day with my inks, and they are fantastic for this. The texture of these are not like makeup brushes or sponges. Don't be fooled. I tried to go cheap with my makeup brushes, and they don't do the trick, and they just shred. So as you can see, they're easy. I use a light touch. You can see I'm not pushing down really hard. I'm not holding hard with my hand, and I'm just pressing in. I hope that this gives you a really good idea of how you can make a more beautiful poinsettia card with the holly. Dave is going to take it from here, and he's actually going to show how you put the flowers together with the glue and how he works with them on putting them on the card fronts. But I will show you this. This is just a little sample that I started to show you how pretty you can make these flowers and hollies work together. Okay, thanks. I'm turning you back over to Dave. Have fun. Please feel free to write me anytime. My email address is on my blog at Kittycraft, and I welcome any questions, and I'm always very happy to help.
Okay, we're back here, and we're going to start molding. So Kitty showed us how to do this, and so I'm going to use the tools that came in the McGill set. If you bought one of those, it's what I have. And so as far as the little tool that indents the holly, I'm going to use the smallest little tip on there, and I'm just going to gently score it and go over it a couple times. So let's just move into here. I'm going to take the largest ball, and actually I'm going to take the next to the largest one, because these are the smaller leaves. And I'm going to put them up here on my molding pad. Now, what I found was I liked to let's go in here tighter, switch to this view. I like to let the piece of paper run free. And by that I mean, if I don't hold it down, it'll move on me, but I get a nice feel for it. And I don't weaken this structure where it's just thin in between the leaf and the base. If I'm holding it, that tends to want to tear there. It wants to move. And now it may not be important there, but here it is important. So I just move it around and let the leaf move on me. I can always move it back. So that's a technique that I developed, not in contrary to what Kitty was doing, but just because I was worried about that, and that was my workaround. And because we made these so irregular, you have to kind of modify your process a little bit for some of the longer ones. And we turn that over, and I'm going to switch to the largest ball but the small point on it, and I'm going to rotate that down, and I'm not initially going to push on it. And where I deviate from what Kitty's doing is simply because of my inexperience doing this and not understanding whether the paper is going to tear or not. And so I'd rather be more gentle than more aggressive with this. And so we're going to move right along here so that you don't have to sit and watch. Well, that's pretty much what we're going to be doing the rest of the day, is molding and gluing. So we'll just get through it as quickly as we can. I've instructed them to pass on some questions to me so I can talk to you, because I'm going to run out of chit-chat after a while.
You can tell them about us moving.
We started off the segment today by explaining that Rubbernecker was going to be no longer a California company, but a Tennessee-based company, and then we realized that we weren't live yet, so I don't think anybody heard that. If you did, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat it, but Pat and I bought a home just south of Nashville, and it's ready for us to move into as soon as we can get this one cleaned up and move out of here. And Rob is in the process of doing the same thing. So shortly, Rubbernecker will be in the Midwest, if that's what Tennessee is, or the north-south. So the majority of your packages will get to you even a day earlier, maybe more. They told us that the weather in the Nashville area was very moderate, just like California. Mostly sunny all the time and hardly ever got below 45 degrees. So, we thought that would be a great place to relocate to.
It snowed yesterday.
And my son is telling me that it snowed yesterday, so someone was not paying attention. Anyway. Okay, so let's assemble these. So this is my greatest fear. Here is my glossy accent ability. So we're going to take these guys and we're going to position them in here and see if there's a magic number. Maybe about like that. It doesn't take much of this. I tend to overuse, but I also tend to keep the top off and have it dry out on me, so I'll try not to do that. So I think she said to just hold it here for a second. Okay, so that's going to hold. I'm going to take the little flowers that go in the middle of this, and I'm going to pop 3 of them out of there. I think I can fit 3 of them in there. Now, small one, I'm going to push down on this, keeping the stylus absolutely vertical, and I want this one.
Kitty says to make sure you use a straight pin in the glossy accents to keep it from the nozzle from getting glued up all the time while it's sitting there. So you have to put the cap back on. A straight pin in the glossy accents nozzle. So you don't have to
Okay,
put the cap
and
on.
Kitty is offering a suggestion so I don't have to put the cap back on all the time, and I'm going to follow that because it would be easier. I don't have a straight pin as she suggested, but I do have a safety pin, which for me is probably a lot safer anyway. So we'll slide that in, and okay, so now that I have it in there, I want it out, but she's right about the straight pin. The safety pin is a bit too large. I didn't bend these quite as much because I like them to be a little more prominent. So we're going to see if we can fit 3 of them in there. Okay. So now we're going to take the card and we're going to position this little guy right about there. Okay. And you know, it's amazing. I knew Kitty was watching, but I wasn't really conscious of it, and I just realized it. And boy, my blood pressure just shot right up as the master is being watching the student. Okay, so now we've got a couple of. We'll set that aside for a second, and we've got some of our holly on here, and so I'm going to take this small tip and I'm just going to gently run a line across there. And then mold them with my fingers. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it.
Kitty says you're doing great.
Kitty just complimented me, but she's always been a friend, so. You know, maybe the smaller one. This really is a nice little set. And it comes with the opposing tweezers, Rob?
I think so.
Yeah, it has 4 slots.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of those. I'm using the other ones that I think I stole from my wife's makeup table. And this just was harder on my hands to push, but they come with it, and you can see if they work for you. Okay, Now we're going to pick up some of our berries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's pretty much everybody here. So we're going to pop these out. Now, I think it would be very nice to do these one at a time, but it is a lot slower that way. So I'm going to try and do 3 or 4 of these at a time so that you don't get too bored with me. And see if I can do it quick enough. And now I've just made myself nervous.
Says to tell the story about how you met Kitty. You hear me? Tell the story of how you met Kitty. Tell the story of how you met Kitty.
I'm being encouraged to keep talking. I'm not sure what to say at this point. I'm trying to concentrate on getting these little berries in the right spot. This is
so small. Why are they so small? You tell them about the train if you think those are small.
Yeah. Well, I never thought that it would be a problem with these items being small because I didn't expect to ever have to do this, but I know Kitty probably hates us when she goes to make one of these things. Like, couldn't they have been just a little bit bigger? And I certainly have an appreciation for it now, Kitty.
There's one at the bottom of that one too. Probably gonna have those pre done for you.
Okay. So you learn as you go that the one that's at the bottom, it really isn't necessary because we're not going to use it. So if I'm going to position this, I'm going to try and lift these branches up here, get underneath here, tuck it in, and see how I like it. I have an advantage because I'm going to do my best to copy what Kitty did as opposed to creating something on my own. And I'm sure that that will be a tremendous help for me. So I think I'm going to trim that one off just a little bit. Let's move out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing in case I move off while I'm gluing. We don't need to be right up on top during that time. And so there we have Dave's version of card number 1. I will compare it so you can see how much better the Masters was. Keeping things nice and tight like that makes a much prettier arrangement. Okay, that's number 1. We'll regroup here just a second. Get the pin back in my stopper. And we'll move on to card number 2. This is the Vellum. So we have all of our pieces here, and I took a look through it. I know I said to cut out a lot because that's how much the paper would hold, so you could have an amount whether you need it or not. So we're not seeing any of the twigs on kitties, and if you want to put them in, you've cut them out. It's just fine. But we're going to work to this composition. So we're going to start with our large greens that are going to go in the background, but we're not going to roll these as much as I did on the red one because I remembered that we want these to lay flatter. So let's go back to our close-up and move along there. So ladies and gentlemen, if there are gentlemen watching today, let us know where you're from. I'd like to acknowledge how many places across the country are watching today. That's a fun thing. You know, it's a terrible thing. The pandemic has really forced us to change our lives, but we found some new things and some new ways to communicate with each other. You know, we have a lot of differences with each other in this country, but one of the things that we do have is the ability to make lemonade out of lemons. We find a way to persevere through all kinds of tragedies. And we'll get through this one too. I'm going to put a little glue on that while I've got it in front of me and put the other one on top of it and set it aside and let it dry. Okay. And now, okay, so the vellum is very brittle, and I found this out earlier today making this flower. The little one I snapped clean through, and one of the other ones I broke one of the leaves off of. I was able to glue them back on, but gentler rather than aggressive with this is better. I notice on kitties, these were shipped to us packaged, and so they probably flattened down, but it's not rolled as much as the paper, and I'm sure the reason for that is that it just won't stand it. So be gentle with your movements with the vellum. There is no reason to rush in this. I can see I had a little glue underneath there and I'm trying to get it out of the way. Okay.
Illinois, Memphis, Tennessee, Mesa, Arizona, Pasadena, Miami, Florida, Staten Island, and Rochester, New York.
So we're up in New York, and we're in Tennessee, and we're in Pasadena, California. Miami and
Mesa.
Mesa, Arizona watching.
Can she go get some blue Adobe for us?
What's that?
Can she bring? She ship us some blue Adobe? Restaurant.
Well, I just told all of you to be careful with your vellum, and I am finding that this piece of vellum is not reacting the same way as the one this morning did. I might not have heated this one quite as hot, and so it's not quite as brittle, and it is not molding as easily with gentle pressure, so I'm going to give it a little bit more and see if I can get it to bend. And there I just heard it crack, so we're going to stop, move on to number 2. If you're working along with me, let me know how it's going for you. I would really like to hear in-process comments from people. If it's going the same way, or if you're having more success or less success.
Harder to form is because it's not smooth. It's not as smooth of a paper, so it doesn't mold as well.
Who says?
Kitty.
The vellum being not made up of fibers as much as it is a homogeneous, homogenic piece of plastic, it's not going to separate and roll quite as nicely. But it certainly did on this one. And so all I can think of is that I gave that one far more heat than I gave this one, which made it more brittle and less pliable. But heating it up to make it that way is a slippery slope, because a little bit too much and I tore 2 or 3 of my leaves on it.
How many pads you got there? 2? You're working on 2 pads? Are you working on 2 pads?
Yes, I have 2 pads.
Okay. Is one a mouse pad or is it?
No, they're both McGill pads. I have 2 McGill pads that I'm working on. If you only bought a set with 1 pad in it, the mouse pad could be used to do this. I just knew that Rob would be using my mouse pad to work the computer, and so I didn't steal it from my computer.
Someone said they got 12 inches of snow. Don't tell them that it's 80 degrees outside today.
Where? Somebody commented they had 12 inches of snow today.
They're in New Hampshire.
Oh, in New Hampshire. Well, you know, there's one thing that I'm not going to make it to Tennessee by Christmas, but I'm looking forward to next year, and I very definitely hope that we have a white Christmas. I grew up in Virginia, and it was one of the neatest parts of the time was that we almost always had snow for Christmas. My parents, I'm sure, absolutely hated it, but I was too young to know that it was a problem.
With snow. Remind people that you want to mold the flower petals from the back side, not the front side. With the embossing, you'll mold them from the back, so they pop the other way. Somebody's asking what side to do it on.
The flowers were molded from the back so that they curved back down. And the holly, I'm just putting a line in the front so it looks like a vein and bending them from the front. Okay. Okay, so let's get this one. Okay, let's glue some white berries onto our holly here.
Veins are actually on the, so if you emboss them, the veins will show. You just use an embossing mat on the die. They're there.
I was just informed that the die does have embossing veins on them. You just have to have an embossing pad to accomplish it.
We don't do any molding with the twigs, right? The twigs are just flat on there. We're not molding anything on the twigs.
No, there's no molding. The question was, are the twigs molded in any way? But no, they're not. They're just slid in. Okay, let's finish our install here.
You're kind of out of camera again. Yeah, you're big time out of camera. You're mad. There you go.
Yeah, we're having trouble getting that one to glue. That means I've used a bit too much glue, and it's not quite setting up for me. Well, I'm about to give up on that one because it doesn't want to attach, and I have no idea why.
You know, we got Kitty coming in.
Kitty's going to
Vellum
make...
doesn't like the glue as much as regular cardstock. It takes a bit more time to hold them in place.
All right, so Kitty's bailing me out by saying that the vellum just takes longer because it's not fibrous, and so it doesn't adhere as easily with the glossy accent. So I'm going to go ahead and put the glue on all of these and just hold them for a second and see if we can get them to take. And if we can't, we're just going to move on. This would be a good time to have a joke prepared to tell you. I'm really not very good at telling a joke. You should, next time you come to a show, you should ask my wife. She's fantastic at telling jokes. She never remembers the punchline, and she always gets it wrong, but you're laughing in stitches when she's trying to tell it. So I think she tells a great joke. She'll be in here in just a minute to comment on that, I'm sure. What she'll say is, well, at least I can glue paper together.
Maybe. Is it gluing? She says just hold it.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not.
Too many layers and too much glue down at the bottom, and it's
Yeah,
not
too
evaporating.
Try flattening it out so there's not as much puff to it.
Doesn't have hardly any right now.
Okay.
I was told to try and flatten out the flour and see if I could get the glue to spread, but there she is. She came in to complain about the joke.
I have a joke. What? How do you make? It's irrelevant. Do Bradley. Divorce Bradley.
So Patty's brought me in 3 jokes about elephants. 2 of them are not suitable for publication. But one of them here says, what do you get when you cross an elephant and a computer? And the answer is 2-ton know-it-all. I told you, she's a whiz with jokes. Okay. So we're going to give up on that one and say that
Regular glue.
it almost glued down correctly, but not quite.
Put a glue dot
And
between the layers. You getting glue dots?
and it will come out looking like this if you just have patience with it. But we're going to move on to the next one because you don't want to sit here and watch glue dry. So we formed these and showed you how to put them all together, but we just simply failed on that one. And I don't have a satisfactory explanation as to why that happened, but it did.
If you had glue dot, would glue dot hold them together?
A glue dot would hold it instantly. There's a thickness to glue dots. Somebody's asking this on the computer, and I think it's a good alternative. It's certainly to try. So let's move on to this guy. It's not going to be anything different in the flower, but we've got some other things. So we've got our piece that we cut into this earlier today, and let's go back and see if we can mold some.
I can do glue dots. Glue dots. No.
And we'll move this right along because the paper does mold very quickly.
You got 40 minutes, so hurry up.
Hmm?
You got 40 minutes. You can back out.
if you didn't get this in your package, and I think I left it out of a lot of them, you are eligible for a coupon that's good for 15% off any order you want to place with us between now and the end of the year. And it is cumulative with any sale that we're running. I'm going to check and see. It's a one-time code for each person, but you can pass it off to your friends if you so choose, because it's good for one location, one computer,
One account.
one account. And I'm getting a little aggressive with my greens here because they're supposed to be a little flatter, so I'll flatten those back out. And I think what we're going to end up doing on this one is we're going to take the largest green and use it, and some of the smaller leaves on the smaller green that I cut, we're going to tear those apart and place them on this one to give it a very full feel. So that's a little bit different than we've done before. So we tried to make things a little bit different from one card to the next, so there's different techniques being learned. There certainly is by me. Okay, so we're going to use our green as a base. This is the largest green. And we didn't put our pin back in, so it's glued to it. There we go. Paper. How wonderful.
I got no more vellum. Didn't you have 2 creams to put on that?
I was just asked off camera about the second green. I wanted to build this a little bit, and then I'm going to slip the greens in because it's still in a pentagon form, and so there's only so many different variations we can do with this. But if I am to take these and just simply disassemble a few of them, I can slip them back in and glue them to the one right next to it, and it will just slightly be off. So I'm going to show you how we do that right now. I'm just going to put a little bit here on the side of this and make sure I attach it on that side. So the glue is on that side, so I just want to bring it in over here and tuck it in like that. And so we get a little bit more greenage going on. as we do that. And because I am not paying attention to which side I'm doing it on, it will definitely be random. Like so. And then you can layer it up above the pink in some places as well to make it look even more natural. Like so. And I tore off all of them, but you don't have to use them all. I'm going to stop with 3. But I see a nice spot for that one. And do I have the glue on the right side? I do. And so we were able to expand that using an extra leaf. And we'll continue building the pinks with this one.
Try to stay in the frame as much as possible.
Okay. And we're using 3 of our little flowers in the center here from the yellow. Poke those down, mold them again. Okay. Okay, so on to the base. And you probably wonder why we don't put all the twigs and the holly underneath. And the way Kitty described it to me is that she wants to be able to compose it dry first before she places everything underneath. And that makes total sense to me.
Make sure to tell them that we're doing the class on the 12th with Expo.
I can't hear you.
Make sure that we tell them about the class on the 12th that we're doing the at home with Expo.
Okay, we need some pink pieces, which I don't seem to have, and I don't know why. Here we go. There they are. Okay. I'm going to set that aside. If you're interested in watercolor, we have a few new of our 2-part watercolor flowers coming out next week. And on Saturday we're doing a recorded class for Scrapbook Expo that you can visit on there.
We go off at 10:20 Pacific time.
SSBE.
Now it's on Facebook and
Scrapbook. I'm being told it's Scrapbook Expo's Facebook site,
yes,
and we're off at 10:20
Pacific.
Pacific time, or noon and 20 minutes in my new home of Tennessee. And it's not really a new home for my family, though. My grandfather was born in Tennessee, and my grandmother as well. Way back in 1858, my grandfather was born over in Mountain City, Tennessee, and then he eventually moved to South Dakota where he made his home. So in some respects, the Miller clan is going home. Okay. We're looking forward to the end of this pandemic and being able to get back out on the road again and see all those smiling faces. I don't think that's going to happen until sometime around summer, but it will be nice. I'm sure you're like us and have found that quarantine, while absolutely necessary to keep everybody as safe as we can, is necessary. It's not really the life we wanted to have. So I'm just going to stuff a few of these under there. I don't mean stuff, but if it's not quite up to Kitty's standards, you'll forgive us. And you'll make yours much better than I'm going to be doing here. And she's right, keeping it on the pad makes a big difference in the ability to control things.
Shade of pink that was in paper cut?
I was asked what color this is,
It's on all the paper comes from
and
paper cut.
all of our paper that we're doing the class in comes from the paper cut up in Appleton, Wisconsin. our great friends Ron and Sarah Justison. Pink lemonade is what we use for the pink. The red was wild cherry. And the green was, if I'm not mistaken, jelly bean.
What weight? 100 pound? 60 pound?
And almost everything we used was 100 pound. If we used jelly bean was the other one. I may be showing you 65 pound, but it was 100 pound. This is much too thin for these guys. This is 100 pound. And I'm pretty sure that was jelly bean. Nope, it's not jelly bean. It's something else. Let me find it.
No.
It's not. There must be another green here. That's the correct green, but I've lost the insert.
On the back of it, flip it over. Okay.
So we'll get those posted for you. If you got them in your packs, it's kind of inconsequential, but if you didn't and you'd like the paper, that's one way we can get that to you. Let me get this last one in here. And we'll move on to our final card. The twigs are a nice add for thickening up the greenery, giving it a nice full look.
You're off camera.
So you're gluing the twigs right to the top of the holly leaves or to the paper? Or both?
I'm finding a spot. It's more ending up on the holly than it is, but any place that you can find in there to go underneath the green leaves is fine. So I'm tending to put them where the holly is, but that isn't necessarily the best place to do it. So we're, in the interest of not keeping you here forever, and composition is a relative thing, let's just say here is a space where there's nothing. If you felt like that needed to have something to achieve a nice composition, then you lift up your leaves and you place it in. And that was when you have time and that is not a consideration, dry mounting these first to get them in a position where you want, and even snapping a picture of it so you remember it, is a nice way to do this. And it's the way that Kitty works when there's no time constraint. So she's grouped hers in a much more attractive grouping than I have. And that's just the skill of Kitty as a crafter and me being absolutely void of that talent. Not completely, but I'm much better with a watercolor brush in my hand than with this. Now, we're going to move on to card number 4. which is our white card. It's this guy with our base, and we're going to put 3 small flowers on here. We got a lot of pieces for this one, but they'll go relatively quickly because these will mold very nicely.
Where's the red piece glued, on the base or the flap? The big red piece.
It was glued on the inside. This was pre-cut for you. So somebody asked me how the red was glued on. And so this piece was pre-cut for you in your package, and then the blank piece of red that we embossed. And I simply tucked it on the inside, butting it up just like that, and glued. So I put my tape on the back side of this so I know it would be matched, and folded it over.
The second die for the berries. 2 sets of non-berries. Oh, how'd you cut out the little red berries? Did you just cut them out one and then again? The little red things up on the top in your screen for the glossy accents?
These?
Yeah, how'd you do that? Do you have the die to show them?
Yeah.
Okay.
The berries are part of, we're being asked how the berries came. The berries are part of the holly set, and there's a little pattern of 9, and I simply cut out or gave you, this was to be done off scrap of other things that we had left. And so I just, you can see on the points here, this is where a flower came into it, and it was just a piece that was left off. And I just placed it back and cut them off again for each of those, as many as I needed to have. So we still have this one to be used here. And I did this one, and I've got 18 of them, of which I'm not going to put them all on. Okay. That one goes there. And let's glue those together. So we've got 3 of these patterns with that one and this one. So these are the same size, and they're going to make our base. There's nothing but white on this one. And then a little center. I'm going to flatten that down just a little bit because I'm going to put 3 red centers into that, and they need some room. And I've got them on the table somewhere, I thought. Here we go. 1, 2 anyway. And when push comes to shove, I can always use one of those. Okay, and we would make 3 of those. And now we've got our twigs and our holly as well. So I'm going to grab a couple pieces of holly here and groove them. And so at this point it is repetitious. We're doing the same thing over and over again. It's just different colored paper. A little molding.
So that way people can see how it's completely done for later. But Mom thinks that you got too small of a poinsettia in the center of the last one. You missed a layer on the white. You got 2 larges and then a small. Was that how it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Okay. She's just asking. Oh, you can probably skip the red. The berries. But
Okay, so the composition on this is the same. We're going to take the flowers and we're going to glue them onto here. And they're going to go on in a 3-spot process. So we're going to put 1 right there.
move up on the table. There you go.
And we would tuck everything underneath it substantially. Actually, we're going to probably trim that because there's not enough room to go all the way up there.
flip your paper back out like you had at the first one, where it's flat out, the back end sticking flat out, but then you'll be able to glue it down better. There you go. Are you sure you're not supposed to have a medium one in there? He says don't add the greenery or anything until all 3 flowers are down. Because it'll be easier to find room.
Okay. Okay, I just got a note from Kitty saying that putting the greenery in ahead of time will make it difficult to compose it, but we would have a second flower there, and a third, and you can see we wouldn't have a lot more room. I'm just going to skip over to this rather than building all those and show you what Kitty did. So I missed the interpretation here. She's made these flowers slightly smaller than I did. She used the smallest one and then the next size up from that, and I jumped up one whole size. So if you followed the directions, you ended up with flowers that were my size. And I apologize for that if you've already cut it out. There isn't anything I can do about that. If you'd like them to be more delicate and small like this with more greenery around the outside, then you would need to have some white paper that you could recut to do that, rather than having these larger leaves versus the small ones. So we're just going to move on to the next one because I can't fix that mistake. And the last card is using this panel that we made in the beginning. And we're going to make, where's Kitty's original example of that one?
Underneath your paper, right underneath that paper, the joke, underneath the joke, I think.
And so this is Kitty's, and so she's designed it to open sideways rather than top to bottom. And so we'll go ahead and build that one as she's designed it. Okay. So we've got 2 large green ones and then all 4 of the red ones. And we'll use 3 pieces of holly. And at least 4 or 5 of the twigs. Okay. And we'll need some yellow centers and some red dots. Okay, we have everything. Okay, let's put some glue on those so that they'll start to set up. And we'll move on to our red flowers. These will give a little more pressure too, so we get a little more curl out of them. I switched to the next size roller stylus for the smaller two. Actually, for the last one, I'll switch to this, the third smaller. Okay, we'll bring the green back in and proceed to build.
When you're all done with the content, somebody would like to see how you did the pink edge again, the double edge. With the die cutting, how you lined it up and made it work.
Okay. Oh, I saved the best one for last. That one came out really nice. Get a couple of yellows for the center. I'm going to open up the card, move those aside. Okay. Score our holly real quick. Well, no need to be quick. I apologize for that. No one ever calls me. I'm sure it was somebody that had to talk to me.
Switch to the other camera, please. It's buzzing.
Do what?
Switch to the other phone, the other camera. Yours is buzzing and vibrating the screen.
Okay. Okay, I've done something to completely clog that one. So we're switching to our backup. And I used 20 times more than I should have there. Okay, that's the last berry. If I never see another berry, it'll be too soon.
All right, zoom back out now.
This is where the sixth hand would come in very nicely. And there we have our fifth and final card. Now, if anybody wanted to see us do anything else over, please say so now. I have had one request to show how we cut a matching piece for this guy again. So I'm going to show that. If I have a piece of paper I can crib to do that with. Let's see what I have here.
Grab a piece of pink from back behind and cut it. Right there.
So what I did when I first started to do this is I made a template because I was cutting literally a couple hundred of these, and so I need these two right here. And so
I don't know if you're on screen.
yeah. Well, I'm going to cut this one real quickly, and that'll give me a base, and then I'll show you how the pink gets put into it if yours was missed, which obviously somebody else had that problem and missed it earlier today. So I'll make this card like that. Okay, so this is what we're starting with, is this card right here. And what I'm going to do is take a piece of pink A2 cardstock, they want this in better. It's kind of a small screen for what we're doing, but I folded the cardstock over that came with it, and now I'm going to place the pink one in that position right there, and I'm going to hold it and reopen it and lay it down on my table. And I'm holding this with my hand, and I'm going to position the die so that it's relatively parallel with the one that's there. And then if I had done this right, I would pre-cut a couple pieces of paper. But of course I didn't think that far ahead. A couple pieces of tape, I mean, not paper. And so I'm going to reposition this and get it right. We have two helpers here, but nobody thought to give me some tape. I'm going to blame it on them. Too late now. And position this just like that. Tape the die down. I'm taping it to the piece of wasted paper that's going to come off of this. And at that point I no longer need the white one. So I can turn this any way I want at that point. And I'm going to put it through our machine. And simply remove the piece with the die and set it aside. And now we have this piece which matches like such. And that's how you fix that. You just need a new piece of pink paper that we didn't get you. Okay, were there any other questions from anybody at this point?
No.
We substantially bored everybody so that nobody's got any questions left. So it's been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope I did a decent job. I'm not hoping for anything more than decent.
We'll do more once we get to Tennessee.
We'll be doing more of these once we get to Tennessee, and they will more than likely have Kitty doing them for you rather than me. And that'll be a lot more enjoyable for everybody because she has little tips and techniques that she can show you through the whole thing. If there's any that you'd like to see her do, if you've seen any of her cards that you think would make great classes, let us know, and we'll pass those on and see if she's willing to do those on camera for you. Other than that, I guess that's the end of this one.
Happy holidays.
thanks for joining us today. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Stay safe and stay warm. I think it's going to be a cold winter if this beginning is any indication, with people getting multiple feet of snow early in December.
Move your guy. Just go ahead.
And that's it. Bye-bye.